Okay, guys, welcome back. This is the second part of Lesson 1. And just to review, the main idea of Lesson 1 is right there on your screen. What did the founders think about constitutional government? Now, Lesson 1, Part 1, covered the first objective, which was explain what the founders knew and thought about human rights. This video, video 2 of Lesson 1, is where we're going to evaluate the different forms and types of government. Now, if you were to look at your textbook, this can be found on page 6. And we're going to look at the forms of government. Those are different than the types of government in terms of how I characterize them. But this comes from Aristotle's idea of a government. And Aristotle is, of course, the Greek philosopher that looked at different forms of government. And just to review, Aristotle said that government and a state must decide what needs to be done and decide how it needs to be done. We're going to look at the different forms of government. And the first kind of idea is whether or not a relationship exists on different levels. And by levels, I mean different parts of a government or a state. Remember, a state is any political entity. Every government's pretty unique. The historical development of that government makes it or gives it its characteristics. Every country or state organizes its government differently. And again, we're going to look at how a state, in this case a political entity like a country, has a relationship between the different levels of government. These can be federal or state or local or county, but essentially that's what we're going to look at first. Okay, let's look at two different key terms. They're right there on their screen, and they are essentially the two forms of government that we're going to spend the next couple of minutes looking at and discussing. We're going to see a unitary system of government and a federal system of government. Here are the definitions of those. A unitary system of government gives all powers, all key powers, that's specific when I say all key powers, to the national or the central government. There are a number of different countries in the world that have unitary systems. Great Britain is probably the one that you know the best. It has a monarchy, which means it is a king or a queen. But in this case, we're not looking at the type of the government. We're looking at a form of government, and this is a unitary system, meaning Great Britain's government, central government, has all essential powers. This is different than the United States' form of government, which is known as a federal system. The federal system divides the powers of government between the national and the state. This is pretty evident in how our country works. There's the federal government, in which Barack Obama is the president. We have a Congress and a Supreme Court. And then, of course, we also have state governments. Governor Nixon is our governor. We have a legislature or a Congress. In the state of Missouri, it's known as the General Assembly, and we have a Supreme Court. This is dividing the power of government between different levels. We call this federalism. I do not want you to get this confused because of how we state the national government. Sometimes the national government is known as the federal government. And that would lend people to believe that we have a unitary system of government. In this case, I want you to see the broken down word, unitary. Uni means one. So a unitary system gives all powers to one level of government. In this case, it's the national government. Now, when I say power, power is important because another word for power is sovereignty. Sovereignty is probably one of those key terms that you need to know as a general, in your general knowledge base for government. Sovereignty is supreme authority within certain boundaries. So in a federal system of government, or federalism, The national government has sovereignty over the entire country. The state of Missouri only has sovereignty over the state of Missouri's boundaries. Ozark only has sovereignty over Ozark's boundaries, so on and so forth. Think about it in terms of police officers. Police officers can only have jurisdiction or power over a certain boundary area. Nix's police department can't come over and arrest you in Ozark City limits. So here we see the way the power flows. You notice on the left, in a unitary system of government, power flows from the central government towards the people, towards the political states. In these diagrams, the little squares represent people or political entities or even states. You notice that in a unitary system, the states get their power from the government, from the central government. In federalism, you see that power flows both directions. We give power to the central government. Central power gives us some sort of power as well. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is types of government. And this is really what Aristotle, or how Aristotle distinguished between the different types of government. And he looked at the number of people controlling it. There are 3 types of government that we need to look at. Number 1 is autocracy. Autocracy is where a single entity, so in monarchies or in dictatorships, it could be a person. These are single political entities have supreme power or sovereignty over everyone else. A monarchy usually consists of some sort of royal, like a king or a queen, or in the case of Saudi Arabia, you have sultans. But these monarchies get their power usually from sort of divine right or from some sort of a god. There are 2 different types of monarchies. All right, constitutional monarchies are like England. They have some sort of parliament or Congress that's also helping control the government, not just the monarchy. The second type of government is an oligarchy. Oligarchies are small groups hold power. These really are the communist governments of China, Cuba, in the old Soviet Union. And the third type is democracy. And of course, since we live in a democracy, we are going to look at democracies over the course of the next several months. Democracies mean rule by the people, or people hold the sovereign power. We actually hold the power, and we give it, or we can give our consent to be governed to the government. All right.
I hope my typing is not
It's fine if it is.
carrying over.
I had an email during that. I forgot to turn it off, but I wasn't going to go back.
That's fine.